Hey, how's it going? Greetings everyone. Sean, where the heck are you? Well, allow me to explain. King-size bed. More sprawling room than you could ever possibly need. I love it. I totally gotta get me one of these. Well, sorry, it's a little dark, I realize, but if I turn those lights on, then they're gonna just silhouette me. So we'll go into close up and I'll turn some of the other lights on in a minute. But just to give you a quick rundown on what's going on, those of you who follow my videos on a regular basis will probably already have figured this out. My apartment is having asbestos removal done due to the damage from the flooding and asbestos being discovered in the drywall. So basically the management put me up in this hotel free of charge for a few days while they do the asbestos removal and repair work. So, not having access to the computer, I've been enjoying some trashy reality TV on cable, which of course I don't have. And I also thought, hey, what a great opportunity to get caught up on some reading. So I brought a couple of things with me and actually went out and bought some new things. So I thought we would do a little book update. Well, specifically a graphic novel update, because I bought a bunch of graphic novels and I bought a collection of notable stories. And that's what we're going to talk about today on the Multimedia Chronicles, On Location. Welcome back. So, yeah, not having a DVD player or Blu-ray player or anything here, I couldn't bring any of my movies or anything with me. So I thought, yeah, let's do that good old-fashioned thing called reading, shall we? So let's take a look at what I brought and what I got. Okay. Now, first off, those of you who watched my recent graphic novel collection overview will recognize this one. Marvels. Without the slipcover. I do, of course, have the slipcover, but whenever I read hardcover books, I always remove the slipcover so it doesn't get damaged or anything, and I set it aside in a nice safe place to keep it safe, and then enjoy the hardcover, and then when I'm finished, I put the slipcover back on, or dust jacket. Anyway, you know Marvels, basically just a beautiful miniseries illustrated by Alex Ross and written by Kurt Busiek, and it's just fantastic. I had started reading it a little while ago, but I just never really sort of sat down properly to read it. I was really wired last night because I had a job interview today, and I'll talk about that probably in another update. Basically, I couldn't sleep, so I thought, well, let's read. Reading always usually, helps me to relax and get into sleep mode. I've had many an occasion where I've been reading in bed while I've been tired and been woken up rudely by the book falling on my face because I passed out. So anyway, I decided to sit down and read some more of Marvels. And man, I gotta tell you, I couldn't put it down. I ended up reading the whole damn thing in one epic reading and absolutely loved it. It was just fantastic. If you're at all interested in the Marvel Universe or just a Marvel fan in general, I cannot possibly recommend it highly enough. It is absolutely 100% must reading. It's just fantastic. Basically, it's cataclysmic events that formed the Marvel Universe that we know and love today. The early days of the Marvel Universe as seen through the eyes of a photographic journalist and, just regular people who were there when those events took place. So it's really a different kind of perspective on the origins of the Marvel Universe, and really, really well written and really, really well drawn. So just beautiful painted artwork by Alex Ross. So next up, 2011 is without question the year of Dead Space. At least the first couple months of 2011 are the months of Dead Space. with, of course, the long-awaited Dead Space 2 finally coming out and making waves everywhere. Just everybody's talking about it, and great stuff. And of course, as with the first one, you may recall the first one had a tie-in comic book, which was adapted as a motion comic, and then they also had Dead Space Downfall, the animated movie, both of which were prequels to the original Dead Space game. So you had essentially 4 things, 2 of which were basically the same thing in different forms. So, I of course did see the motion comic when it was originally being released, way back before the game even came out. It is quite literally chapter 1 of the Dead Space saga. It is where it all begins. It is the earliest chapter, although I guess technically now the earliest chapter would be the new novel that came out, Dead Space Martyr, which is the one thing I have not been able to find. I looked everywhere, all over the city, looking for Dead Space Martyr. Nobody has it. Absolutely nobody. So I'm thinking I might have to special order it or something. Anyway, I did see the motion comic of the original comic book back in the day, but I never got around to picking up the actual comic. Until now. That's right. We got the nice, snazzy, glossy hardcover edition of the original comic, and it's quite nice, with artwork by Ben Templesmith of 30 Days of Night fame, and it's just fantastic. It's a great story. This basically tells you the story of what happened on the colony on Aegis 7 shortly after the discovery of the marker, and just how all hell broke loose there, and it ties directly into events in Dead Space Downfall, and then of course the first game ties directly into events from both the comics and the movie. So yeah, so being a huge fan of the motion comic and just the Dead Space saga in general, this is obviously something I really wanted to get. So finally found it and was able to pick it up. Actually, I had found it a few other times, but it was always when I didn't have money. So yeah, anyway. And then of course I had to pick up the new comic, which ties into the second game, and it occurs between the first and second game, Dead Space Salvage. Now this is basically about a salvage team that discovers the wreckage of the Ishimura and goes on to see what's going on there. And we also find out what happened to the red marker. So those of you who haven't read it, I'm not going to spoil anything, but yeah, check it out. Honestly, in terms of a review, I didn't think it was as good as the first comic. It's still pretty good. It's, you know, a decent light read, but yeah. Also, it's a different artist on this one. It's an artist by the name of Christopher Shy. And Christopher Shy's art style, I think, honestly, works better as just individual pieces rather than being a visual narrative like a comic book. Because I found that his style essentially very similar to Alex Ross in that he obviously uses photo studies and whatnot for his characters, but I found that a lot of them didn't have a lot of variation between them. It just seemed to be a lot of characters kind of standing around, not really doing anything. So it's visually interesting, like it's got an interesting visual style to it. You know, like when they discover the Ishimura, that's pretty dark and spooky and pretty cool. But you know, a lot of the time it's just kind of the characters like just standing around, not really doing much, and it's the same facial expressions over and over again. So I don't know. It has its moments, but it's not as kick-ass as the first one. It is written by the same guy though, Anthony Johnston. So I don't know. Pick it up if you're a Dead Space completist, which of course I am. But I wouldn't say that it's a chapter that you simply cannot live without. I mean, the first Dead Space comic was really an integral chapter that you really did not want to be without. But Dead Space Salvage, I think you can kind of take or leave it. Then, you may recall in my very, very first graphic novel overview, I picked up one of 2 volumes that were put out of this particular series, and unfortunately never got around to picking up the second volume, which had the latter half of the series. This is an independent comic that I've always been a big fan of. Originally went by the title of Xenozoic Tales, also known as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Now it's just known as Xenozoic. And this is a massive, massive magazine-sized tome, about 350 pages on heavy, high-quality stock paper. And this contains absolutely every single every single issue of Xenozoic Tales ever published in one massive volume. So this is a very, very nice edition, and if you're a fan of the original comics, like I am, and or the cartoon that was spun off from it, I definitely recommend checking this out. And you might want to hurry, because the guy at the comic shop said he was trying to order in some more, but wasn't getting any response, so he suspects that it may already be out of print. This was only published in November of 2010, so at the time of this recording it's February 2nd, 2011. So yeah, might want to hurry on that one. And it's pretty affordable too. It's only about, it was about 40 bucks. So 40 bucks for this massive tome of just fantastic post-apocalyptic storytelling with this just gorgeous, gorgeous black and white artwork reminiscent of the old Tarzan comics and Flash Gordon and stuff like that, but a lot edgier and a lot more cinematic in presentation than some of those older comics were. But it definitely has the spirit of high adventure and pulp fiction that those old great comics had. And then finally, not a comic book, but a series of stories. I've been wanting to pick these up for so long. Everybody's recommended them to me forever, and I've never really read anything of them. A collection of Robert E. Howard's original Conan the Barbarian stories. Now, sadly, this is not the complete collection. There was a set, two volumes, I think, put out a while ago that actually did have the complete collection of Conan stories in chronological order. I've not sat down and read this yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to it, because Conan is largely considered to be the beginning of the sword and sorcery fantasy genre. I mean, these stories were originally published in the late 20s, early 30s, and then sadly Robert Howard actually took his own life in 1936, and it wasn't until years later that Conan became sort of the household name and legend that he is today. So unfortunately, kind of like H.P. Lovecraft, you know, how he never saw how popular his horror stories became. Well, it's the same thing with Robert E. Howard. He never really saw how popular his Conan stories ultimately became, and that's a shame. Anyway, these are all original unabridged stories, and it's a pretty sizable collection. I'd say it's probably a good half of them in here. So yeah, definitely looking forward to checking that out. The early stories, early days of Conan, and the basically the beginnings of the fantasy genre proper. So very cool. Some people may not know this, but Conan actually predates Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia. So Conan actually came first, which is, see, that's just another thing that makes it really interesting to me. Also the fact that I love pulp fiction type stories. In particular, I love pulp fiction, sci-fi and fantasy type stories. And this is just, forget all the highfalutin, you know, hoity-toity, snobby fantasy. This is just good old blood and guts, hack and slash, demonic forces, swords and fighting and hot chicks action right here. This is the stuff that real men fantasy fans read. So yeah. Anyway, I picked that one up at Chapters. It was actually on their bargain shelves for 15 bucks. So look at all this. Look at this stack of Conan here for 15 bucks. I couldn't pass that up, even if it's not complete. I mean, I at least get a good chunk of it there, and then I can track down a complete set another time. At least for the time being, I really just sort of want to get a taste of the original stories and get my feet wet in the Conan universe, because Conan is a character that I've been meaning to check out for forever, and I just haven't got around to it. I mean, I've always been interested in the comics and such, but I just never really got around to reading very many of them. And yeah, so I figured, like, why not go right back to the beginning and check out the original short stories and novellas that spawned the character. Okay, well, that's it for books. Needless to say, I've had plenty to read and have been enjoying it immensely. So it's definitely nice to be able to start adding to the collection again. That's something I'd really like to do more often, actually, is get more graphic novels and trade paperbacks and stuff like that, because going through the old comics again recently, I realized just how much I miss them, you know, and how much I miss reading and the excitement of reading a new comic and discovering something for the first time, or revisiting an old favorite, you know. So yeah, expect more graphic novel updates in the months and years to come. Alrighty, I guess that's it from me to you for now. I do have another update I want to do while I'm still here at the hotel, so we'll do that next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara. Now, first of off, and sayonara. Ugh.